All right, I may have been wrong about Sersi. I was not very high on this card at the beginning of the season, but I've done a lot of research specifically for this video. I've done more research looking into Sersi today than I ever anticipated I would, and I can confidently say Sersi can actually cook. Let's talk about Sersi, y'all. The newest card, Series 5, as always, coming to Marvel Snap. Let's take a look at what she's going to bring down, okay? Let's take a look at what she's going to do first, because she is a high RNG card. 100% high RNG card. She's a 5/7, the new favorite stat line of Marvel Snap. On reveal, transform your other cards here into random cards that cost one more, if able, right? So if able means, very simply, if that cost exists. So 6 cost cards. At the time of the release of this video, there is no 7 cost card. Eventually, we'll have Arishem, and I'm going to factor this in as Arishem currently existing because it will give more longevity. And then Arishem obviously could turn into Death as an 8. Everything goes up 1. The 3s turns to 4s, 4s turns to 5s, etc. And I've been really wanting to try to figure out if this has any potential good to it, right? Because if it does, is there something that we can really work with? Because a lot of people are excited about junk decks. I think most than anything else. They say, okay, I can take the hood and now transform that hood, which is a -3, now into a 2-cost card at random. Or I can take the void from Sentry and I can transform it into a random 5-cost card. And this is very exciting for our junk players. They're trying to figure out if there's something good here. But here's the thing. To know if you actually are going to get value on converting a card from one cost to another, you need to evaluate all the cards, and you need to look at what are your percentage chances of getting your card, which is blank, to turn into something that is, well, blank. And that's exactly what I did. I sat down and broke down in my own personal rankings every single card in Marvel Snap and gave it a ranking of 1 to 10 in regards to Sersi and the interaction with Sersi. How do I feel if I take a Nova and I have to flip it to another 2-cost card, or if it's a Yellow Jacket that turns into a Nova? And I broke everything down to look at the best possible targets one by one. I did a lot of work for this. Then proceeded to break it down even further and say, okay, what are the best possible chances of getting an upkeep of, at least in my own personal opinion, again, this could be completely different to every creator that you find, and there will always be exceptions to every variable. However, for the most part, how does it feel to take a 0-cost card and move it up to a 1-cost card? How good does it take to take a 3-cost card like a Broodling, which everyone's also talking about, and convert it to a 4-cost card? What are your average chances of it being a better increase? And I broke down every single card to try and find the best possible targets. But there's another thing that we need to raid with this. We need to understand with this card what happens with Wong. Because Wong is a whole nother mechanic that has been confirmed. Wong will not just take the card and transform it up. If you play Sersi onto a Wong lane, any other card that's in there, it's going to move up twice. That has been confirmed. That has been confirmed, which is incredible to me, because then it changes the entire marketing of what you do with this card. That alone, being able to skip a 1-cost card to a 3-cost card, is big. Now, granted, Sersi's in that lane and Wong's in that lane, so you really then only have 2 targets that could skip. But sometimes you only need 1. Plus, Wong will go to a 6-cost card, which has its ups and downs as well. So I sat here and I tried to break down as many different options as possible for 1 cost, moving to 2 cost, and to 3 cost. What are the best possible ratios and whatever? And there's a couple of cards in particular that really stuck out to me, which is what led me to the decks that I'm going to be showcasing today. So this is, again, my personal take on looking at every single card in Marvel Snap, the chances of it moving to a higher cost and being a better card from its original cost, because overall, I'll give you this rough general statement, okay? If you're moving up one cost, the best general category of cost cards to get an upgrade is actually 5 cost cards going up to a 6 cost. Overall, that is the best possible exception. Best single location, 5s turning into 6s overall. The worst is 4 cost cards switching to 5 cost cards. Now, again, to each of those, there are personal opinions there, okay? Exception on the 5 cost turning into a 6 cost is something like Valk. Has good and bad associated to it simultaneously. 4s turning into 5s, okay, of course, switching the Void into a 5 cost card, chances are going to be very, very good. It's changing the power positively. Going to be very good. You know, Mr. Negative, flipping that. Duh. Evolutionary, what a dead card. Not anymore. You know, there's a couple of cards that really stand out, and that's going to be the case with every single cost. But generally speaking, if it's moving up one cost, my number one category, based on my own personal rankings, and I'll put it back here on the screen again, my number one category was right here. 5 cost cards turning into 6 cost cards. That was my number one category. Next to that, I then say the 0s turning into any of the 1s, and 2s turning into 3s. 3s turning into 4s was almost break even. Almost break even on feels good. So that's kind of where I was. But almost all categories, keyword, almost all categories did better when moving up 2. Moving up 2 costs via Wong. Except 3 cost. Taking your card, playing Wong into a lane. Sorry, playing Brood and somehow only 2 cards pop down. You know? Or taking a 3 cost card and switching it via Wong and Sersi into a 5 cost card. Going from 3 to 5 is actually overall worse. Which was hysterical to me. Because I kept going, why is this bad? How does this feel bad consistently? There's so many good 5 cost cards. And then you start looking further into the 5 cost cards versus what you put out there for ongoings and what you put out there for tech. And I started looking at all the on reveals. This is, again, my own personal take. You want to go through this, you want to go ahead and pause the video as many times as you need to criticize me down in the comments on my rankings of where I think cards are on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best. Here it is. You take it in and do it all, do whatever you want with it. But this was me deciding quickly this morning, first impressions, how to evaluate all the cards in Marvel Snap. And I just realized I still have my filter on. I didn't even put on 5, 6, 7, and 8 because, you know, here's the rest of them. Boom. Go ahead, evaluate me as much as you need to say if this is a good or a bad thing. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's take a look at the decks that I think Sersi is actually going to have a good impression on, okay? First and foremost, let's pop that over here. Let's take a look at Sersi is junk. I wanted to play a junk deck, but I didn't want to do the junk deck that pretty much everybody and their sister's going to do. I wanted to do a different take on junk. And I went with the Junk Death Mockingbird variation because I could take out Squirrel Girl and I can put in Shauna. Shauna feels like crap all the time, let's be honest here. But having a 3 cost go to a 4 cost is one of the better jumps. And generally, Shauna at a 3/2 plus a 1 cost card going to a 2 cost card, that's a nice lane. And it can be even put down correctly on curve while also getting a demon into your hand via the hood. So you've got a couple of different targets on failed opportunities. That's what I wanted to do. The hood, you're converting it over if you can't destroy it. Bucky Barnes, sometimes you don't get that destroy card. Sometimes you don't get LDS or Carnage to put it out there. But you can now turn it into a 3 cost card, and that's a pretty good jump. Viper, once you send something over, getting a 3 cost to a 4 cost is very good. Move that up into a 4 cost card. Now we're looking pretty promising. You've got the Void that you can, of course, slip on over. LDS, Lady Deathstrike sitting at a 5/6 doesn't always feel good, but if you are willing to take that chance, chances are Sersi into a Lady Deathstrike is actually a very good combination because 5s going to 6s seem incredibly strong right now. So you've got several different lines of getting out the Mockingbird via all of the produced cards. You've got death from all the destroyed cards, or you can just yeet everything on over and have a good time. You've got Viper taking care of that, as well as Annihilus. This is my take on taking junk to a different direction, because there's a lot of cards here that you always feel bad playing except for very specific instances. This is one of those instances where Sersi is going to be able to capitalize on those mediocre cards like Shauna, Viper, and Bucky Barnes and turn them into something a little more valuable. So Sersi is junk is the first deck to work with for me. Mighty Morphin Power Tokens. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a Patriot deck because you have a lot of token cards, right? You have your Squirrels and Squirrel Girls. You have your Mr. Sinister. You have your Mysterio. You have your Broodlings. So, of course, this is a semi-standard Patriot deck with a couple of variations in there. We are now feeding into White Tiger being in here because now White Tiger is a 5/1 that if you play that Sersi on top of, now it's a 6-cost card. Good chances at your 6-cost being upgraded to a better card than that 5/1 Tiger. Feeling pretty good about that. On top of it, I am playing Wong in here to get double move-ups because Wong into a random lane, you could already have a Squirrel, you could already have a Mysterio clone. Wong into Sersi is now going to turn that 1-cost card into a 3 and that Mysterio clone into a 4. And that's a really strong upgrade. That's a really strong upgrade, and I like that lane in particular showing power because they still both reinforce Mockingbird. You're just changing which random card is reducing Mockingbird, not the fact that you can't anymore. So Hope Summers makes the cut in that package as well, so we have a couple of other cards to play around. The Mysterio clones are going to be able to get that extra power out there, so you can put things like Blue Marvel and Patriot down towards the final turn. Spread the power wide with this deck and give the reinforcements afterwards. That's what I wanted to do with Mighty Morphin Power Tokens, to see if Sersi can transform some of the lesser needed or wanted cards into really good, valuable pieces. Note though, overall, when I looked at Brood going into a lane all by itself with Sersi, there's a lot of 4-cost cards that need a follow-up reaction or just end up not giving enough power because they have a secondary mechanic in play that needs to happen. And it just, in a clogged lane, is not going to be beneficial to you. It's never going to feel good when you turn a Broodling into a Tuma. Bob and Weave. Yes, Sersi move. Because Sersi move gives you another out mechanic to getting better power on the game. There's a lot of 2-cost cards in most move decks, and 2-cost going to 3-cost is a very good jump. You always feel bad if you don't use your beast effectively. You always feel bad once Cloak goes down and doing something of that nature. You always feel bad knowing that you don't want that Silk to move any further, but you want a good card. Now you can lock some things down. Plus, Miles Morales is essentially a 1-cost card that's going to get upgraded via Sersi to a 5-cost card because it goes on base cost, not played cost. So I liked taking that reduction idea on Miles Morales and using that to the advantage as another option for Sersi. Because if you're building a Heimdall-style move deck where you want pieces moving back and forth regularly, if you're missing that Heimdall play, sometimes this is a really good idea to have a second option where it's like, am I going to Heimdall or am I going to Sersi? Because look, in this lane, there's 3 weak cards. But I didn't pull Heimdall, so I could just reinforce the strong lane that currently exists, and my opponent's going to try to play into the Heimdall shuffle. Now, all my cards move up, and now I'm feeling a lot better about that lane than I was previously. Because if you don't get the move, the deck never feels good. So you need another way, and I think conversion and transforming via Sersi is a way to be able to do that. So move may have a home for Sersi. It's a little bit of a stretch, but looking at the cards and locking them down, specifically the Miles Morales synergy, I really like that one. That one's probably one of my favorite ones. You could probably do the same thing with the Black Bolt Stature synergy too, playing down Black Bolt on another deck, which I should have thought of and made before, but think about it now, and I'll let you guys create the deck list in the comments down below. We play Black Bolt on 5 into Stature plus Sersi on 6. Pretty good to me. Seems pretty good to me. Servo. High Evo. Wasp going to any 1-cost card is basically an upgrade. Almost any 1-cost card is basically an upgrade. Shocker going up to any 3-cost card, basically an upgrade. High Evolutionary going to any 5-cost card is essentially an upgrade because he's worthless. So I wanted to put together the blink variation of High Evolutionary with Hope Summers, not magic, and try to have something where if you can't blink it out, you can Sersi it out. You can buy more time that way by playing the Sersi down on even turn 4 potentially, because you can put it on the Hope Summers lane, get the bonus energy too. So there's some cool things that can be done with High Evo because there's a lot of dead cards once they've done their things. It's one of the things I've hated about Shocker in the High Evolutionary package and why he often gets cut from most builds, because once you've used him, he's really just a whole lot of nothing. So now, if you can upgrade him to a random 3-cost card afterwards, now he's got double value. So I like that. High Evo, when you have no other options and you gotta curve it out on turn 4 or turn 5 just because you have points, to know that you can upgrade it later on via Blink or via Sersi, now there's value. And that's what I'm trying to work towards with this deck. Get value out of this weird middle and of Shocker, High Evolutionary, and even Hope Summers a bit, because it deserves to be a little bit better. So this is Sersi mixed into High Evo. This one is dedicated to my friend here on stream, White Wayne Brady. I built an Agatha deck, which is literally just plopping in Sersi into an Agatha deck. So it's a lot less exciting, but it does take advantage of cards like Okoye and Shauna, which want to be converted upwards, because Agatha's going to have a lot of fun, no matter what. But whether she plays on down Cull Obsidian, Blue Marvel, Sersi on those final turns, who knows? But I do think that the automatic upgrade does bring some light to Agatha. I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's an Agatha deck. Take it what you want. Let's take a look at the actual Zoo version, Sersi Gone Wild, where we can play some powerful, keyword, powerful 1-cost cards that typically have a downside and convert them into cards that have an upside, especially if you whiff, right? How bad does it feel to play Spider Ham and then nothing? Or Rocket Raccoon, you go for it and you miss. Or you've got your Martyr down and you know it's gonna move. You're probably gonna lose. Well, what if you could upgrade all of those? And the Demon and the Shauna, upgrade them to higher cost, better cards. I think that there's something there. I think that Sersi ends up finding a home in Zoo to make some of these stronger cards that have chance to them help mitigate the downside of that chance. Cards like Rocket Raccoon and Martyr in particular are big on that, because if you know the Martyr's going to move, I'd rather settle for that being upgraded to some 2-cost card that doesn't move. So Sersi Gone Wild feels good to me. I like this idea. Fill it up with Dazzler, get some extra pieces. Zoo could be a home for Sersi. Disposable Sersi. This might be one of the stronger types of shells because it's a Wong shell, right? And it's got a lot of disposable cards and creates another outline for what you do with Nomura. Nomura is a very, very powerful card right now in the current metagame. A lot of people are climbing into top 50 in Infinite with Nomura decks. This is taking that idea and trying to take it one step further, especially once we have Arishem in the game. Because converting a Doombot from a Doombot to an Arishem is 2 extra power. Converting over that White Tiger into a 6-cost card, probably going to be an increase as well. Ironheart, if you need to just play it out, play it out. If you need to play out that Echo, play it out to protect underneath the Wong. But guess what? If you don't get the combo, you don't get Nomura, you don't get White Tiger, you can still Sersi that lane and salvage a lane by bringing the Echo up to a 3-cost and the Wong up to a 6-cost. So I'm excited to see how this shell in particular works for Sersi decks, because there's a lot of disposable, movable pieces that you can say, I've got it out onto the battlefield, now what do I do with it? Do I want to leave it? Do I want to move it? Or do I want to flip it? It's like a Marvel Snap version of Bop It, essentially. Disposable Sersi. Lastly, this is my take on a ramp deck. This is Serampsi, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a Jubilee Blink ramp deck. that allows us to take those lower pieces and transform them into something better. Take that Jubilee, move it to a 6 cost. Take that Electro. If you couldn't blink it, that's okay. Go ahead and Sersi it. Still counts, still gets rid of the downside of Electro and mitigates that ramp damage that you can't get around sometimes. I like the idea of ramp being good here. Whether that sticks, I don't know. But overall, I think Sersi presents more excitement than originally anticipated. I think Sersi is a card that's going to create some interesting, fun, wild creation moments. Really, it's going to happen. I think she's going to be a fun card, but is she going to replace other mechanics that remove cards, right? Is she going to fully replace Blink? Is she going to replace your destroy cards? Is she going to get you over that threshold because RNG is in your favor? I'm leaning more towards yes, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of deck building with Sersi is not just toss out the bad because it's bad. Not all the bads are best removed via Sersi. Moving the Void, sure, you can Annihilus it over, or you can Lady Death Strike it. And both of those are better than Sersi. But you could still convert it to a 5 cost. There just might be some downside to it, more often than not. So I like what Sersi's mechanic does because it opened my eyes to also some bad cards in Marvel Snap and tried to get me to use them in a disposable way. Here's an on reveal that's at low power, but I need it on the board to get the effect. But what if I just do nothing with it now? Now it's a dead card. Ironheart's a great example of that. I think Sersi has a home with trying to convert those kinds of cards and mechanics and things out. I think there's something there. Is it going to be meta competitive? I don't think so. Is she going to replace big, key, crucial cards in Marvel Snap? Probably not. But there is because of her RNG, I hate to admit, the more I sit on it, there's a small, I'm going to admit this much, there's a small chance that she has a competitive relevance. If Loki can have a chance at being successful because of cards like Agent Coulson, where you do look to play those cards occasionally, there is a chance that Sersi has a little bit of competitive edge to her. I'm willing to give in to that finally. I still think overall she's one of the weaker cards of the month because RNG is going to be incredibly important here. And understanding your strengths and your weaknesses of that RNG are also incredibly important. So I leave you with a reminder, at least in my personal point of view, because the Wong combination is something we'll leave separate. Generally speaking, in my personal opinion, moving most cards that are either 0, 1, 2, 4, or 6, generally speaking, on the whole, not 3 cost, not 5 cost, generally speaking, those are going to be your Wong targets. You want Wong plus those. But for your individual move ups, you want to target your 3 cost cards not as often as you want, as you might think, like your Broodlings. Your 4 cost cards generally are not good, minus the Void and High Evo, pretty much. Best overall opportunity, in my opinion, overall, 5 cost cards going to 6, and probably 2 cost cards going to 3. Hopefully this provides a little bit of insight. I decided I wanted to do something a little bit different, look into the math, try to figure out what I like most about it. And I think that Sersi has some potential. Maybe not as much as I would want, and maybe not as much as you may think. But let me know down below. Let me know what you think. I think she's going to be exciting and fun to play with. And there's about that much of a chance that she gets competitive. Just don't use your tokens on her. Maybe some keys if you have them. Alrighty, y'all. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe. You know the whole routine. And I'll see y'all next time.